Project MKUltra, the CIA's mind control experiments in the early years of the Cold War. As the world trembled between nuclear fear and ideological obsession, the United States government launched one of the most secret and disturbing programs in its history. Its goal wasn't to build weapons or bombs. It was to control the human mind. Between 1953 and 1973, under the code name MKUltra, the CIA conducted hundreds of classified experiments on unsuspecting civilians, prisoners, and even its own agents. They tested hypnosis, sensory deprivation, torture, and a new, unpredictable drug, LSD. Behind locked laboratory doors, doctors and spies tried to erase memory, implant false beliefs, and break the will of human subjects, all in the name of national security. Many victims never even knew they were part of an experiment. Some died. Others were driven insane. Officially, MKUltra was an attempt to defend America against communist mind control. In reality, it became a sprawling network of psychological torture and unethical science that blurred the line between defense and domination. For decades, the US government denied everything, until a set of files accidentally escaped destruction, revealing the truth, a secret program designed to rewrite human consciousness. This is the story of Project MKUltra, the CIA's darkest experiment, and a chilling reminder of what happens when science serves fear instead of ethics. Welcome to Secrets of Army. Chapter 1, The Origins of Mind Control. The roots of Project MKUltra began long before the name existed, in the paranoia that defined the early Cold War. In the 1950s, the United States intelligence community was haunted by a single terrifying idea: what if the human mind could be controlled? After World War II, shocking reports emerged from both Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan of human experimentation involving drugs, hypnosis, and psychological torture. The Allies had captured not only scientists but also their data. Programs like Operation Paperclip secretly absorbed former Nazi researchers into American laboratories, and some of them brought disturbing ideas about manipulating the brain. But the real catalyst came from the Korean War. When captured American POWs appeared on radio broadcasts denouncing the United States and praising communism, US military officials panicked. They believed the Chinese and Soviets had developed brainwashing techniques capable of erasing loyalty and rewriting thought itself. In reality, most of these confessions were coerced through starvation, exhaustion, and propaganda, but to the CIA, it didn't matter. The fear was enough. If communist nations could control minds, the US had to learn how to do it better. In 1950, the CIA launched Project Bluebird, its first attempt to explore interrogation and mind manipulation. The goal was to control an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will. 2 years later, Bluebird evolved into Project Artichoke, which experimented with hypnosis, truth serums, and electroshock therapy. Agents wanted to know, how far could a human be pushed before breaking? Could a person be reprogrammed like a machine? By 1953, the CIA's director, Alan Dulles, authorized the creation of a new, far-reaching project that would unite these efforts under a single codename, MKUltra. It was placed under the control of Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, a soft-spoken chemist with a fascination for poisons and a deep belief in psychological warfare. To the agency, he was known as the Black Sorcerer. Gottlieb's mission was simple but limitless: explore every possible method of mind control. He was given a blank check, no oversight, no ethical restrictions, and direct authorization from the highest levels of government. His experiments would span hypnosis, sensory deprivation, radiation exposure, electroshock, and an array of chemical compounds that could distort perception, break memory, or destroy identity. At the heart of his research was lysergic acid diethylamide, better known as LSD. Originally synthesized by Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann, LSD fascinated the CIA because it was unpredictable, capable of producing euphoria, confusion, or total mental collapse. Gottlieb believed it could be used as a weapon, a drug that could make prisoners talk, destroy leaders' credibility, or even create programmable assassins. Under MKUltra, LSD became both a tool and an obsession. The CIA began testing it not just in labs, but in hospitals, prisons, universities, and even random bars across America. Many of the subjects never gave consent, or even knew they were being dosed. What began as science soon turned into chaos. The search for mind control was no longer about defense, it was about dominance. And as the project expanded, it would consume not just its victims, but some of its own creators. Chapter 2. The experiments begin. Once MKUltra was officially approved, the CIA wasted no time turning theory into practice. Dr. Sidney Gottlieb and his small inner circle of chemists, psychiatrists, and covert agents were given one mission: to test the limits of human control. With nearly unlimited funding, Gottlieb established a vast network of front organizations and university partnerships. From Harvard and Stanford to private hospitals and secret military sites, scientists were quietly recruited, often without knowing who truly financed their research. They were told they were studying behavioral modification, stress response, or memory enhancement. In reality, they were experimenting with mind manipulation under CIA supervision. At the center of these studies was LSD, the agency's chemical obsession. Under the MKUltra umbrella, the CIA purchased the world's entire supply of LSD from the Swiss company Sandoz, then distributed it to researchers and field agents for testing. The experiments ranged from controlled laboratory doses to complete chaos. In one test, college students were unknowingly given LSD in their drinks and observed through hidden cameras. In another, prisoners were offered reduced sentences in exchange for participation in medical research. In one of the most infamous projects, Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA set up safe houses in San Francisco and New York, disguised as brothels. Prostitutes hired by the agency lured men inside, slipped LSD into their drinks, and let agents watch from behind two-way mirrors as the drug took effect. The idea was to study how drugs could weaken inhibitions, expose secrets, or manipulate behavior under sexual and psychological pressure. These operations blurred every line between science and criminality. But LSD wasn't the only focus. Gottlieb's team experimented with barbiturates, amphetamines, mescaline, scopolamine, and even high doses of electroshock and radiation. They tested how combinations of drugs and hypnosis could erase memory or implant false suggestions. The CIA hoped to create a Manchurian candidate, a programmable assassin who could kill without awareness or remorse. Some experiments were performed on US and Canadian mental patients, often without consent. Doctors at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal, led by psychiatrist Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron, conducted brutal depatterning sessions. Patients were kept in drug-induced comas for weeks, subjected to massive electroshock, and forced to listen to recorded messages on repeat, sometimes for hundreds of hours. The goal was to wipe their minds clean, then rebuild their personalities from scratch. Most never recovered. Even CIA employees became victims. Agents routinely took LSD during training sessions to understand the drug's potential. Some suffered permanent psychological damage. One of them, Dr. Frank Olson, a U.S. Army scientist, was secretly dosed by Gottlieb during a retreat in 1953. Days later, Olson plunged to his death from a New York hotel window, ruled a suicide at the time, but decades later revealed to be part of MKUltra's cover-up. As the 1950s turned into the 1960s, MKUltra had grown into a sprawling empire of over 150 sub-projects, operating under dozens of code names. Hospitals, universities, prisons, even drug clinics, all became silent test sites for the agency's search for control. The experiments had no consistent goals. Some sought truths, serums. Others pursued memory erasure or behavioral conditioning. But all shared one thing in common: human beings reduced to data points in an invisible war. And the deeper the CIA went, the less it remembered why it started. Chapter 3: The Victims and the Fallout. By the early 1960s, the MKUltra program had infected every corner of American research, hospitals, universities, military bases, and even local communities. What began as an experiment in defense had become a shadow network of suffering. The victims of MKUltra were as diverse as they were unaware. Students, prisoners, mental patients, addicts, soldiers, even ordinary civilians were dosed, hypnotized, or psychologically broken, all without consent. Some were left catatonic, others institutionalized for life. Few ever knew they had been part of a government experiment. The case of Dr. Frank Olson became one of the most infamous examples of the project's brutality. Olson was a biochemist working for the U.S. Army's Special Operations Division, helping develop biological weapons. In 1953, during a CIA retreat, he was secretly given LSD by Sidney Gottlieb as part of an internal test. Days later, Olson began experiencing paranoia, panic attacks, and intense guilt over his classified work. He spoke of leaving the program, and that made him a liability. On November 28, 1953, Olson fell from the 13th floor of the Statler Hotel in New York City. The CIA claimed he had jumped. His family was told he suffered a nervous breakdown. But decades later, declassified documents and a reopened investigation suggested otherwise, that Olson may have been murdered to silence him. His death became a symbol of MKUltra's moral collapse. In Canada, Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron's experiments at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal left dozens of victims permanently damaged. Patients who had entered for mild anxiety or depression left unable to recognize their families or recall their own names. They were kept in comas for weeks, blasted with electroshock, and bombarded with hypnotic audio loops. Cameron called it psychic driving. He believed he could erase mental illness by erasing the mind itself. He was wrong. Some victims tried to speak out, but their stories were dismissed as delusions. The CIA's secrecy was airtight. All records were classified, contracts hidden behind shell companies, and payments routed through fake foundations. Even within the agency, few knew how vast the project had become. Sub-projects had splintered off, from LSD testing on soldiers under Project Third Chance, to psychological warfare tactics under MK Search. Every department wanted a piece of the mind control puzzle. But cracks were beginning to show. LSD was escaping the laboratory. By the mid-1960s, the drug had leaked into American culture, into universities, the counterculture, and the streets. Ironically, the CIA's own experiments helped spark the psychedelic revolution it would later try to suppress. Figures like Timothy Leary, once a CIA-funded researcher at Harvard, began advocating for LSD's liberating potential, unaware that the agency had bankrolled his early studies. As the truth seeped out, MKUltra's leaders grew nervous. In 1963, CIA Inspector General John Ehrman issued a secret report condemning the project's lack of oversight, and its violation of human rights. The report was buried, and MKUltra quietly continued under new names. By 1973, as the Watergate scandal erupted, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all MKUltra files destroyed, thousands of documents, spanning 2 decades of experiments, erased in a single act. He called it a necessary security measure. In reality, it was the perfect cover-up. But not everything burned. A few boxes of financial records survived, and when they resurfaced years later, they would expose one of the darkest chapters in American intelligence history. Chapter 4, Exposure and Denial. For 20 years, MKUltra remained buried beneath layers of classification, denials, and destroyed files. But secrets have a way of resurfacing, especially when too many people are haunted by them. The first cracks appeared in the early 1970s. As the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal eroded public trust, journalists and Congress began to ask dangerous questions about the CIA's activities inside the United States, something the agency was legally forbidden to do. Among the whispers was a name, MKUltra. In 1974, the New York Times published a groundbreaking report by journalist Seymour Hersh, revealing that the CIA had conducted illegal drug experiments on US citizens. The story ignited a national scandal. For the first time, the American public realized their own government might have used them as test subjects. The White House could no longer stay silent. In 1975, President Gerald Ford created the Rockefeller Commission, followed by the Church Committee, a Senate investigation led by Senator Frank Church. Their mission was to uncover the extent of CIA and FBI abuses. When questioned under oath, former CIA Director Richard Helms and MKUltra Chief Sidney Gottlieb claimed they remembered little. Helms admitted that in 1973, he had ordered the destruction of all project files before leaving office. Without documentation, the investigators faced an impossible task: they were chasing ghosts. But luck intervened. In 1977, a Freedom of Information Act request unearthed 20,000 surviving financial records hidden in an overlooked storage box. These documents revealed contracts, sub-projects, and payment trails linking the CIA to universities, hospitals, and private labs across North America. For the first time, the paper trail of MKUltra came into focus. The Senate hearings that followed were explosive. Victims testified about being drugged, hypnotized, and psychologically broken without consent. One former CIA officer described the experiments as a systematic violation of every moral and medical code in existence. Dr. Sidney Gottlieb was called to testify but downplayed his role, claiming he was merely following orders during a time of Cold War urgency. He portrayed himself not as a villain, but as a patriot, a scientist who believed he was protecting his country. The committee didn't buy it, but without hard evidence, no one was prosecuted. In 1977, CIA Director Stansfield Turner publicly confirmed the existence of MKUltra. He admitted that the agency had conducted extensive testing on human subjects, often without consent. It was the closest thing to an official confession the US government ever made. The public was horrified, but Washington moved on quickly. A few victims received quiet settlements, most were ignored. The CIA promised that all such research had ended and that the agency would never again experiment on citizens. But even as the scandal faded, the truth remained incomplete. Thousands of documents had been destroyed. Hundreds of victims remained unidentified. And the full scope of MKUltra's influence on science, psychology, and covert warfare was lost to history. Still, the revelations changed the country. They sparked a permanent distrust of intelligence agencies, inspired reforms, and fueled conspiracy theories that still echo today, from alleged mind control assassins to programs like MK Search and Monarch rumored to have continued under new names. For the first time, Americans understood that the boundaries of morality could vanish when secrecy and fear joined hands. And they began to ask the question that still lingers: if this was what the CIA admitted to, what else remains hidden? Chapter 5, Legacy and Lessons. Today, decades after its exposure, MKUltra remains one of the most haunting and misunderstood operations in modern history. It sits at the crossroads of science and secrecy, a place where ambition, paranoia, and power collided to reshape how we view both government and the human mind. For years, the CIA justified its actions as a necessary evil, a response to Soviet and Chinese brainwashing during the Cold War. But history tells a different story. The real enemy was fear itself, the obsession with control, the desire to master not just weapons or nations, but thought itself. The legacy of MKUltra can still be felt in the corridors of power and the ethics of science. The scandal led directly to new safeguards, the National Research Act of 1974, which created ethical standards for human experimentation, and the Belmont Report, which enshrined principles like informed consent and transparency. These protections exist today because of the victims who suffered in silence. Yet the program also left behind a darker inheritance. In popular culture, MKUltra became a myth, a symbol of government deceit and psychological manipulation. Movies, books, and conspiracy theories have kept its name alive, often blurring fact and fiction. While some tales of mind-controlled assassins and sleeper agents belong to imagination, the truth beneath them is chilling enough. The CIA's own declassified files reveal that MKUltra was never a single experiment, but a network of 149 sub-projects, ranging from chemical weapons and hypnosis to sensory isolation, electroshock, and psychological conditioning. Its reach was so vast that even today, historians struggle to define where it began or ended. Some researchers believe fragments of MKUltra lived on through later programs, like MK Search or Project Hoffman, which explored drugs and behavior modification well into the 1970s. Others argue that its influence survived in military interrogation techniques used decades later in conflicts around the world. But the most lasting impact is psychological. MKUltra shattered the illusion that democracy and morality alone could restrain secret power. It proved that, under the right conditions, fear, competition, and secrecy, even a free nation could cross the same ethical lines it condemned in its enemies. For the victims, the reckoning never truly came. Many went to their graves without answers, denied recognition or justice. Their names are mostly forgotten, buried under layers of redacted files and classified archives. But their suffering forced the world to confront a question that will never go away: how far will we go in the name of security? Every generation faces that temptation, to trade ethics for safety, conscience for control. And every generation must remember the lesson of MKUltra, that the pursuit of power over the human mind is not just a scientific frontier, it is a moral abyss. The documents may be declassified. The laboratories may be gone. But the shadow of MKUltra still lingers, a quiet reminder that the most dangerous weapons are not built in factories, but in the human mind itself. The Shadow of the Mind Project MKUltra was never about science alone. It was about control, the quiet, invisible kind that doesn't use weapons or armies, but ideas. It showed that the human mind, when turned into a battlefield, becomes the most fragile target of all. For 2 decades, the CIA tried to map that battlefield. They tried to erase memory, bend truth, and rewrite identity, all in the name of defense, all in the language of progress. But in the end, they proved something far darker, that when morality is sacrificed to secrecy, humanity itself becomes expendable. The files may be burned, the witnesses silenced, the victims forgotten by history, but the questions MKUltra raised have never really disappeared. Every time technology advances, every time governments claim new powers of surveillance or persuasion, the ghost of this program returns, asking whether we've truly learned anything at all. The line between protection and control is thin. And once it's crossed, it never truly fades. Thank you for watching. If you believe stories like this must never be buried again, like, share, and subscribe for more untold truths from the shadows of history. Until next time, stay aware, stay questioning, and remember, the greatest battles are not fought on the ground, but in the mind.